So, Lena, will you let us know when we're ready to start?
Yeah, all the
Okay,
participants are ready now. So there's about
great.
80 people signed up, so we might give another minute just to let some people come in.
Okay,
Is that
perfect.
okay?
So, yeah, great. No, so while we're waiting, hi everybody who's here on the panel. Thanks for coming. Uh, my role here is very limited. I get to welcome everybody, I think, and just you know, um, say that how happy we are to have the event. And then Maeve, I think I'm going to hand over to you if that's okay. And are you going to introduce the speakers and deal with any questions that arise during them? And I think Sally, are you going to take over the panel discussion at the end? Is that right?
I am, yes, that's correct.
Great. Okay. Hey, that's super duper. Good. Okay, so we're all in the right place at the right time. And how many, oh my goodness, 44 people. That's great.
So it looks like things have slowed down a bit now coming in. If you want to maybe make a start, we're probably all
Okie
right to
doke.
go if you think.
Just
Yeah.
a sec now. Yeah, great. Okie doke. All right. So have you admitted everyone? Yeah. Oh, that's
Yeah.
happening now, is it? Yeah, great. Okay. Well, good afternoon, everybody, for joining in on the Zoom call on the webinar this afternoon. Another in the series of faculty forums, and this one is on research. Um, I'm really glad to note, as many of you will know, we're involved in the organization of research in college. That college has identified a need to support research more, and in particular to identify, they have identified support that's needed in research culture and organization. And I'm really glad to see we have Sally Smith here, the director of research. Tig, I think Caffrey is here as well down the list there somewhere. And in particular, I'm going to hand over now to Maeve King, who is the research culture and quality manager for the faculty. And Maeve is going to run this session this afternoon, and then we're going to have a panel discussion with Sally afterwards. So Maeve, without further delay, thank everybody for coming and hand over to you.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. And we're going to get started. So Ty and I are actually in the same room here. So we're side by side, and so we'll be presenting for the first 10 minutes, and then we'll hand it over to our school speakers, followed by the panel discussion. I'm really happy that everybody's here and looking forward to an interesting set of presentations.
Yes, thank you so much, Maeve, and thanks so much to the Dean and to Lena for the invitation. We really appreciate an opportunity to speak about research culture and quality, and really crucially to give some space and to hopefully foster a bit of discussion about how these crucial issues affect your work and how there are new supports and structures across the institution that are here to help. As Maeve mentioned, we're going to just give a very brief overview of the ideas around research culture initially, and then mostly want to give over the bulk of the session to colleagues from across the faculty, sharing their experiences of their own research and research culture, followed by a panel chaired by Dr. Sally Smith from our Directors of Research and the Director of TTMI, again, focusing on some of these key issues. So yeah, we really appreciate the time to chat with you all and really looking at this as the start of a conversation. So what is research culture? This definition comes from the Royal Society and we use it quite often. It speaks to the behaviors, values, expectations, attitudes, and norms of our research communities. And it influences the career pathways of our colleagues. It determines the way in which research is conducted and the way in which research is communicated. We care about it for a lot of reasons, but particularly it's important because it affects the quality of our research. It's a crucial thing to say from the very beginning. It obviously has a lot of influence on the career pathways of our colleagues and retention of those colleagues. It affects issues around EDI, researcher well-being, and mental health. It also affects our reputation as a place to do research, as a good place to do research, and the quality of that research, as I mentioned. And there is increasing focus on issues around research culture from our funders and our governing bodies, including Research Ireland, Horizon Europe, and the Wellcome Trust. So there are, I think, really important foundational reasons for us to care about this from a research perspective. And of course, there are reasons around governance and the broader focus on this within the sector that also gives us a focus on research culture. A few opportunities and issues then within this space, speaking at a really broad level for the moment. Real opportunity to make sure that Trinity is and stays and is known as a vibrant place to do research, that we create the foundations for that high quality research to enhance our reputation, and that we enact the elements of Thrive, our strategic plan, particularly that focus for an intensification of research. And of course, that we respond to feedback from multiple consultations and sources of information that certainly colleagues here would have contributed to over the years, articulating complex issues that are related to different parts of support systems and structures that overall amount to cultural issues that we have the responsibility to look more closely at. And of course, that comes with particular issues in these spaces. So we are working in a complex sector, and there are lots of incentives and disincentives that clash, and that can cause particular difficulty, I think, around interdisciplinary collaboration, the development of the careers of our colleagues as well, and an example there of the limitation of the types of outputs that we might value within the system. There is, along with that complex sector, an increasing complexity and ask on our researchers who, as we know, are already massively overburdened, and our overburdened professional services support colleagues who are also trying to keep up with these trends. And then I suppose a more general issue that when we're looking at things on culture, we're trying to make progress on longer term foundational issues, while at the same time, of course, being faced with short-term problems that we're also trying to solve. So there's always a bit of a balance of the scale and the prioritization of those issues. A few outcomes we're hoping to build with this additional overt focus on research culture and some resourcing in research culture, which I'll speak to in a moment, including the maintenance and increase of our research quality, ensuring that our research environments are positive, diverse, and accessible, and ensuring that we enhance our reputation as a good place to do research. So a lot of mechanisms contributing to this, including the Provost's additional resource for Trinity Research, which I'll speak to again in a moment, a plan to co-develop a research culture action plan across the institution, which includes the piloting of some projects and activities, which Maeve will speak to momentarily, and also making sure that we're up to speed on sector intel for what works and what doesn't work in these spaces. We continue to develop our strategies and policies related to research culture and beyond, and are having a review of the research infrastructure and systems that we have to make sure that they're absolutely in line with our needs in this space. And then, of course, working with colleagues already making progress in these areas, and as I've mentioned before, building collective responsibility for change. And I suppose my crucial point here is that this is only possible when we work very closely with faculties and schools, and all this has to be very much grounded on need. Trinity Research, as I mentioned, has had an expansion recently due to further investment from the Provost. So different teams are forming that have responsibility to further enhance the opportunity around research quality and culture. And my own team is the research strategy and policy team. Our mission is to build diverse, excellent, and insight-informed research environments at Trinity. And we do that across a couple of areas of focus on policies and strategies, intelligence and reporting, systems and analysis, and also culture and quality. And there's a brief breakdown. So we have some colleagues working in each of these spaces, We're not huge, but this absolutely is new resource. And there's a particular focus in our culture and quality space to work very closely with our individual faculties. And as such, we have structured this. So we have new colleagues with a focus on each of the faculties. Dr. Adam Partridge focusing on STEM, Dr. Suze Gerard focusing on AHSS, and Maeve to my left focusing on health sciences. And Maeve can now speak a little bit more detail about her remit and how that relates to your faculty.
Thanks, that's great. And so just to build on that, so each of us comes from different research backgrounds. I myself have a PhD in cognitive neuroscience. We come from different sectors. I did most of my training in the US, Adam in the UK, Suze the UK and Ireland. And so we also have specialisms and interests in different areas of research culture, open science, meta science, data science. And so we really hope our expertise will be beneficial to the community at large. And just on a personal note, I mean, one of the reasons I'm drawn to this particular role, having spent most of my time as a researcher in both basic and applied neuroscience, is really have always been interested in research on research, the culture in which research is done, the policies, the processes that shape our scientific environments, mentorship that can make or break somebody's career. And I believe researchers are among the most creative, enthusiastic people out there, and capable of making really incredible discoveries when they're supported, and then held back when the environment doesn't support them. And so that is why I'm in this space now of strategy, policy, and culture, and what brought me back to Trinity. I did my undergrad here a few years ago, or not a few, many years ago. and so what this role does really, seeing it as a bridge between a high-level institutional strategy and daily reality of researchers. And it's grounded in the idea that no one truly owns research culture. It's work that focuses on building consensus, leading on practical initiatives, and amplifying the great work that already exists. And it's organic and ever evolving. And so it's never really done this work. And we're really part of a global shift in research reform, where the definition of success is expanding to include more sustainable careers, open scholarship, interdisciplinarity, and major funders like the Wellcome Trust are now codifying this shift and ensuring that how we conduct research is just as important as the results that we produce. And so just to be a bit more specific about some of the remit of this role. So when we look at culture, we're looking at the lived experience, using evidence to ensure research environments are supportive, developing policies that bridge the gap between our values and the day-to-day reality of doing research. Quality too, isn't just about the rankings piece, although that is an aspect of the role as well, but it's also about building capacity to conduct high integrity research through really good research practices. And then partnerships, especially important, working across campus, across other professional services, academic schools, to build relationships, prompt discussion about research culture, linking in with other groups on campus. And then finally, evaluating and reflecting any work that we do, initiatives that we run, by contributing back to the literature, and also ensuring our local initiatives are backed by national, international evidence is also important to us. And so just to wrap up here, why this matters, and I'm sure we'll hear a bit more of that in our presentations. And so, I think as we all know, when research culture is strong, the challenges we face become more manageable. We are able to attract and retain top talent. People want to work in environments where they feel seen, valued, and supported. And researcher well-being improves, because a healthy culture prioritizes mental health alongside outputs as well. We improve and sustain research quality over the long run, and ultimately we want, it's about improving Trinity's national position, improving its reputation for research internationally as well. And so just to allude to some of the upcoming opportunities that Taig mentioned, I can't go into any great detail about any of these just for time, but you will be hearing more about these over the coming weeks and months, where we'll be piloting a range of initiatives across faculties and within faculties. And some of these, will be specific to the Faculty of Health Science, where we try to build out a technician forum, for example. We'll do skills clinics, peer-to-peer knowledge exchange sessions across some of the institutes. And also just to mention that there will be a rankings consultancy group or working group with Dr. Jess Wang, who's within our office on May 21st. And I think you may have received an email about that. So be sure to register if it's of interest to you. And so I think with that, I'll hand it over. And thank you so much for attending this. And please feel free to reach out to me on my email here below. And so I think I'll hand it over now to Dr. Cherie Basteo. I'll stop sharing so you can share your screen there. And so Dr. Cherie Basteo is an assistant professor in clinical medicine and the deputy director of TTMI. And she runs the Human and Translational Immunology Research Group. And we're very grateful to hear from her today about her experiences. And you can take it away there, Cherie.
Thank you so much, Maeve. So I'm based in School of Medicine up here in the Trinity Translational Medicine Institute on the St. James's campus. And I lead a team here of fantastic researchers. So I suppose just at the outset, we've tried to articulate kind of our values. And I write this kind of blurb on all our onboarding documents that we are committed to hypothesis-driven human research with high potential translational impact, and that we value as a team creativity, honesty, respect, enthusiasm, and dedication, and that we're really committed to training and developing people to their full potential. So that little piece that I kind of gleaned from a leadership program I did has really been helpful in kind of setting the tone for culture in the lab. My team kind of fluctuates between 4 and 6 people, so we're quite a small immediate team. So really, we can't really deliver impactful science without working as a much broader team. So we very much so try to nurture this kind of team science culture. And just to kind of give you a kind of a brief insight into kind of the work we've been doing recently, these are the 2 papers we published most recently, and we really are this kind of team hub of basic bench scientists and multidisciplinary clinical doctors and international partners that help us kind of deliver on our impactful research. You can see here highlighted in red all our medical doctors that contributed very fundamentally to our research. So based in TTMI, and we're very lucky that we have Director Mark Little, who's also on the call and going to be in the panel discussion. And he has been really instrumental in helping us to articulate as a team of leaders on the executive committee here to articulate what it is our core values are here and our vision and mission, to create kind of this research ecosystem that has a shared purpose and a real strong sense of belonging. So some of the core values here, patient-partnered research, excellence, inclusive collaboration, nurturing research talent, which resonates very deeply with me, and focus on innovation and impact. And then kind of the vision being to improve human health. And then kind of the fundamental part of the mission statement then is about the unity between basic bench scientists, clinicians, patients, and industry partners who can kind of all work together to translate science into medicine. So the element of the research culture that's really enabled my work here in TTMI has been this kind of very strong sense of belonging, and to be in an environment where we're all trying to essentially get at the same goal, to do science that matters, and that science that'll have impact for patients and their daily lives. The other kind of added benefit of being in the TTMI research ecosystem is that we are quite a small community, a very diverse community, but a small community. And it gives people like me access to very senior academics and consultant research partners who are very busy people, obviously. But because we are part of this community, people have, in my experience, people have gone out of their way to make time for me, to do favors for me. Like our incoming dean, Pádraig Fallon, last year I asked him to take a look at a manuscript to give me a bit of advice on it. And he did that for me, no problem. He'd nothing to benefit or gain from that directly, but he did that as a favor to me as part of my research community. So that kind of value of our ecosystem has been really brilliant and a very positive cultural experience for me. This on the right hand side here is my wider team. So these 2 women are my PhD students. I have a postdoc here and another postdoc here over my shoulder. And this is our undergraduate student. So this is my immediate team, but we're very lucky to be embedded within a wider team that focus on TB immunology, and they're also inside a core research theme, which is infection and immunity. So really having this wider support for our young researchers, especially on the ground, gives people fantastic peer support. It kind of creates crack in the lab, and this kind of feeling that you're not on your own in your own little silo of a project. So that's really fundamentally important, that we encourage our team members to kind of to share ideas, share reagents, and inspire each other. Another really positive part of my research experience that has contributed to my culture in my lab now is this need for long-term mentors. So this is Prof. Jean Fletcher, and here she is in her office in TBSI, and I did my PhD under her supervision. And here she is at my housewarming party when I bought my first house and holding my firstborn son. And Jean has been a really long-term supporter of my career. She helped me kind of craft the ideas for my first 2 research proposals. And she did this just out of the goodness of her heart. She wasn't named on those proposals. She didn't benefit anything from it. But she did it kind of for me because she was a fundamental part of my research community. Then the also very key piece of information she gave me very early on in my career was this, her insights into the pathway about making me eligible to kind of get a research team on its feet. And she had this thing of, if you get to your magic 3, as long as you have to go 3 first other publications, you then become eligible for bigger and bigger grants. And for my PhD work with her, I managed to publish these 3 papers, which got me on my feet and made me eligible kind of maybe ahead of some of my peers. So really, she was very fundamental in kind of sharing that information with me and driving my career forward. And then I also want to mention Prof. Joe Keane, who is my head of discipline here in clinical medicine. And he has really been a wonderful kind of role model for leadership. And he very much so personifies and embodies this idea of leaders eat last. It's your responsibility as the leader to serve and protect your team. And he's given me lots of advice throughout the years, and he's lots of lovely sayings, and these are some of my favorite ones. One thing, when I'm hiring and looking for collaborators, he always says, never be the smartest person in the room. Hire excellent people, collaborate with excellent people who grow you as a person. So, every meeting you're in, every lab meeting is an opportunity for me as the leader to grow as well. So I always want to be in a room full of people who are smarter than I am. Mea culpa, Joe's Latin is better than my Latin, but this has really modeled for me the ability of leaders to stand up and take responsibility when things go wrong. It's okay for things to go wrong, and as the leader, it is on us to kind of take the hit and say, I'm sorry. The other saying that he has that I've really embedded in my research culture here is the pup for the path and the old dog for the hard road. So this is about our role as leaders and the necessity really to empower people to succeed. So the idea that you have a very junior researcher and you need to give them a low risk project, multiple projects that because some of them will fail, and maybe a high risk kind of thing on the side. So just to make sure that people's experience is positive and that they publish papers and they finish successfully. Also, really kind of fundamental to his leadership model that I've tried to take on board myself as well is creating this kind of safe space where people can take intellectual risks. So in lab meeting, everyone has a voice and you're able to kind of say, to have an input and mention things where you need to grow, like spaces where you need to learn and develop, and it's okay to lay bare the things you do not know. I also thought this was a good opportunity as a woman in this stage of my life to mention maternity leave and how research culture has enabled my work in this space. So I've taken 2 mat leaves in the last few years, and it's there's a high expectation, I suppose, in research that you don't really go anywhere, that you need to maintain always a relationship with your research team, which is only really achievable and doable if you have really good help on the ground day to day. So during my first mat leave, I had Killian, who's my PhD student. He's a consultant now in infectious diseases. And Dr. Donald Cox, who's a senior research fellow that I'm just lucky to share an office with, just stepped up for me. He stepped up and he stepped in when I needed him most, and he took Killian on the first time and was Killian's support day to day when I was on mat leave. And that for me was such a fundamental part of enabling me to have a mat leave and come back to work, and for all the wheels to be still turning and for it all to be going well. And then when I went on a second mat leave, he did the same for my PhD students at the time, Sarah and Derv. So really sharing an office space has changed my life because I shared it with Dodal, who has empowered me so much through my mat leave journey. And it's a model now that we're trying to establish in TTMI, that we share and collaborate both in office spaces and in lab spaces. But for me, the challenge here is that it's very hard to give Donald credit for my mat leave cover because the kind of contract I was on, I wasn't entitled to mat leave cover. So he just stepped up and did that for me. And it's very hard then because that was an informal kind of arrangement. So I think that's a challenge to our culture that could be changed easily, that we would make space for people to get credit where it's due. Another thing I just wanted to mention briefly is that another challenge to our culture is this perception, especially for women, of kind of having it all. You know, there was a research assistant in the basement left a few years ago, and she wrote me a lovely card to say, you know, she had a great time here, and you know that I was such a great role model to her because it shows her that I can really have it all, and it just absolutely broke me because I feel like it's such a lie. I don't have it all, and I arrive and work most days and I pat myself on the back for arriving in clean clothes and with my teeth brushed, because the reality is you can't have it all. And my journey has been, you know, about compromise and finding the right spaces to compromise in, and being okay with being mediocre at the tasks that don't require all of me. So this is just a picture here of the two women who raised my children Monday to Friday. This is Claire Neville and Jill Byrne, and also the women who have cleaned my house over the years, because we can't have it all, we can't do it all. And I think being honest about what it is we do and how we compromise is something that we can achieve in terms of progressing our research culture. So we all have very shared challenges institutionally to culture. I think the major ones for most team leaders in research is this idea that we have to be it all. And the worst one, of course, for me is this idea that it would be like I constantly have hand to mouth in the lab, and keeping my lab team employed is my major priority. And it's something that wakes me up in the middle of the night wondering, how am I going to pay postdoc salaries at the end of grants? Because these are highly skilled people that I can't produce without. So that idea of the funded precarity is really the major nightmare. There's lots of other shared issues, and for time we're not going to go into them now. But I suppose I just wanted to end on a positive note that I want to remind myself in terms of my own research culture that I am really privileged to do this job, that this job you know, gives us such an amazing legacy in the papers we publish and the knowledge gaps we fill in, but much more so a legacy in people, the people we train, the scientists we train to kind of make impact in the world and in medicine. So I'm just going to leave it there, and thank you.
Thank you so much, Ruth. It was really excellent, and I very much relate to a lot of what you said. I also had 2 maternity leaves during my research years, although in the US, which is the kettle of fish. But yeah, thank you so much for sharing that. And we'll don't have time for questions, unfortunately, so we'll pass straight over to Dr. Shipra Nagar, if you want to share your slides there. So she's a research fellow at the NAPRO, the Trinity Centre for Natural Products Research in the School of Pharmacy and Pharmaceutical Sciences. And we're so happy to have you present. So go ahead.
So hello, everyone. I think, are my slides visible now?
Yes.
Oh, perfect. So hello, everyone, and welcome to you all. And before starting my presentation, I would really like to thank Maeve for giving me this opportunity to share my views on research culture and experience. And honestly, like, I am an early career researcher in School of Pharmacy, Pharmaceutical Sciences at NAPRO Center. And I have just kept it only to my research journey in NAPRO and how it went on. So before starting my sorry, I'll just move this a little bit up. I could. Fine. Anyway, so I would just like to talk about my project, which is in NAPRO, what do we do? It's about unlocking nature's pharmacy from monogamous species. And here we have collected about 72 different species with 39 families, 49 genera, and then end up total in the project, we have 413 samples, and total actually the project is based on natural product drug discovery. And we have an extract. It's just a little bit to tell you about what I do in the lab. So the extract, and then we do some chemical profiling at what samples, what metabolites, group of metabolites we have. At the same time, we also do some biological screening in the work, and that includes in vitro screening, antibacterial activity, antibiofilm, and enzymatic assays. And once we have biological activity and chemical profiling, we actually use metabolomics to correlate these two. So this is the overall view of the project, and actually my role falls somewhere here about what I do. So I'm basically a chemist by training, a polysaccharide chemist, and my role is actually to correlate bioactivity and chemical profiling using metabolomics, data mining, and so on. So that was a little bit about my background and what I do at NAPRO in the project. So before I would say starting commenting on research culture, I would just like to give a little bit about snippet about my career path so far. So in 2014, I got my Dutch fellowship, which is a German fellowship by German Academic Exchange Services. In 2017, I got my PhD degree. 2018, I got this Young Scientist Fellowship, then National Postdoctoral Fellowship, and it was 2021 actually when I joined NAPRO, which is a part of School of Pharmacy and Pharmaceutical Sciences here. And then in 2023, I got my first Irish grant as a co-PI, that Enterprise Ireland Innovative Partnership Program, EIIPP. And then this year, I finally managed to get the Pathways funding. And since our research career focus today, talking about research career of Trinity, I would like to stick only to the 5 years that I've spent here in Trinity. And so far, I've mentioned that in 5 years, I have received 2 fundings in 2023 and 2026. And these 2 fundings are out of like all these 6 fundings which have applied over 5 years. And out of this, these 2 work. And I would like to share on my personal journey how the research career enabled me actually to take one leap from starting at NATPRO, joining NATPRO in 2021, moving to 2023, followed by another leap and managing to get the pathway fundings. So some of the elements of research culture, what really helped me. So the question is, does research culture matters? Absolutely, yes. And I would like to share some of the elements of research culture that really helped me taking that lead. So first thing was team support. When I joined NATPRO in 2021, it was within a research group of Professor Helen Sheridan, and then she got retired and Professor John Walsh took over. And Helen and my line manager, Gaia, they have been really, really supportive. Despite all those unsuccessful grants, still they supported me very well in writing grants, giving feedback on my proposal, giving me a letter of support, even from the head and whole school. That was really a huge support throughout. So that really helped me in keep going. And then collaboration. So actually in 2022, Professor Frederick Sheedy, he's associate professor in School of Biochemistry and Immunology in TBSI. And that time he was working on beta-glucan polysaccharides from mushroom. And that time he was looking for someone who could work in chemistry part of polysaccharides. And that time in 2022, he spoke to Helen. Helen recommended my name, I spoke to Fred, and then I worked on that gap on his project, and it worked out really well. And actually that was the time when it gave me my first publication as shared senior author. And then since that worked very well, Fred said that, oh, he's applying for this EIIP grant. So would you like to contribute it? Would you like to write? And I'm like, yeah, fine. And then we wrote the grant together. My work was doing the chemical fingerprinting of those seaweed beta-glucans. He was working on immunomodulatory, and then it really worked very well. So I would say, had that collaboration not been there, this funding wouldn't have been possible at all. Another element that really helps me is the institutional funding. Trinity really offers loads of these workshops and trainings, which are organized by Research Office and HR, and they have been really, really good. One of the best, I would say, course or workshop that I attended, training actually, course that I attended, that's ARC. ARC stands for Advancing Research Career, and I would highly recommend to all the researchers across this course. The only thing is it's a bit lengthy. It's 8-month course, so it's really need a proper commitment. And with time, because there are sessions, there are assignments that you have to go through. So it does need some level of commitment and investment of time in that course. And in 2024, that was a time when I had this course for 8 months. I was applying for this pathway fundings as well. And then, of course, I had research project. So it was a bit tight for me that time. But I would say the main thing what really helped, because when I was preparing, I was writing my proposal for pathway fundings. I was working on impact statement, and then luckily one of the module in this ARC course that was talking about the impact statement. So that really helped me in making my effective. And apart from that, I would say overall also, even now when I got this pathway fundings, colleagues from school, because there was a lot of paperwork needed to do that, and contacting contract office and then dealing with HR and everything. So colleagues from school and even some colleagues from School of Medicine, they really helped me a lot, giving me some idea like how to give me guidance, how to go through it, and getting a PhD student for that grant. And overall, I would say there are like 21 trainings that I attended so far. And even like in one of the training that I got from Research Office, that was a time in 2021 when I got the difference between what's the research outcome and research output. That was really beneficial. Other is mentor. So like one of the conditions for ARC to have a mentor for this course, and that time Professor Anne-Marie Healy, I asked if she would like to be mentor, and she said yes, she supported me. And that was really, really beneficial to get a few things out of, to get more advice and to improve myself and in specific areas. And the last is colleague friend. Now, it's not an official term, but I think that's the best I could think of. So colleague friend, I would say a colleague is someone who shares a workspace with you, who sits next to you, who works with you. But friend is someone who's really close to you, someone you can confide in. And I have been very fortunate to have Maria Piggott, my colleague, and we joined NATPRO exactly on the same date in 2021, 5 years back. And she has been really supportive all the time, all these years during my highs and lows and all. Because sometimes I feel all you need is someone who can actually listen to you. That really eases you out, especially when you have some frustrations or some when things are not working at your workplace, when you have loads of unsuccessful fundings and it's just not working and not going anywhere. And I feel sometimes you can share this with your friend and your family, but they may not understand the context. So if you have a colleague sitting next to you, they can actually understand it much better scenario. So these are the main elements which really helped me going forward. But all I would say, like, these are the elements externally. And in my experience, even if I have all these 5 elements, they are which worked really well, amazing, still they do not guarantee a successful research grant. They don't guarantee a successful research career. So there are still some elements at individual level that I feel that we need to have, apart from this team support, collaboration, institutional support, mentor, and colleague. One thing is keep going, because even doesn't matter, like, in general, how enthusiastic or how motivated you are about your research idea, about your project, not all colleagues will agree to your idea. And sometimes it happens that not all colleagues, they have your project as a priority, and it's fine, don't feel bad, because they will have their own priorities as well. So the most important thing is keep going. Doesn't matter if things don't work, they will work someday. And next is effective time management. So as I mentioned, in 2024, I had that 8 months, that ARC course, I was writing grant, and then I had a full-time job. And of course, I imagine that PIs, they really support me to write the grants and everything, but ultimately I have to deliver in the project because my salary is coming from the project. So I am the person who's responsible to deliver there as well. So during that time, I would say some of the time management practices, they really help me keep going. Like, still I struggle with my time, still I won't say that I'm a perfect, everything goes well, but definitely I say I'm definitely much better at time management compared to how I was in 2021, 2022. Next is feedback. So for every unsuccessful funding, for every unsuccessful job interview, I will always look for feedback. If I don't get it, I ask for it. And feedback is something that has really helped me going forward, always. Like, even this pathway funding that I got this year, I applied in 2021. It did not come through, but the feedback that I got, it did help me improve in my proposal very well, application. And last, I would say openness to accept things, because sometimes I feel in my experience, we get so fixated with the way we think, the way we work, the way we do things, that it becomes difficult to understand what other people or agency are expecting out of us. So sometimes in that case, I would say mentorship is the one that really helped me in making my mind open about it. And once we know that gap, we can actually see it, accept it, and fill it up. So that was all about my journey and showing how research culture elements, they have really helped me in moving up. And I would just like to finish my presentation with one of my most favorite quotes of all times. It's by Doc Farber, which says, "Every day do something that will inch you closer to a better tomorrow." Thanks very much.
Thank you so much, Shibra. That was really great. And yeah, definitely relate to an open mindset. I think that's really important to highlight. And so our next presentation then will be Dr. Caoimhín McGilliford, if you want to share your slides there. Is a lecturer in special care dentistry at Dublin Dental University Hospital and School of Dental Science. So go ahead.
Okay, thanks, Maeve, and thanks for people who've come before me. Very interesting conversation. I'm Caoimhín McGilliford, and I am a product of the academy system here in Trinity College. Came here in 1997, pretty much still here, and I've gone through and did all of my basic qualifications here, from undergrad, clinical doctorate to PhD. I'm based in the School of Dental Science. I'm going to tell a little bit about myself first, give you a little bit of context about the dental school, share some overview of the research I'm involved in, and then talk about what this means for culture and research in Trinity afterwards. So I have a job that has 5 parts to it, and we're quite unusual here in the dental school in that most of my job is about delivering specialist dental care. I'm a dentist for people with complex needs, people with disabilities, medical problems, and most of my job is delivering care to them at a secondary and tertiary care level. The next biggest part of my job is teaching undergraduates and postgraduate dentists. It takes 5,000 hours to train a dentist, and that's ginormous. And that means that most of our clinical academic staff are focused on that primary task. We also train specialists. So I have 6 specialist trainees with me at the moment. And again, if you think about the qualifications that we're providing, the standards that we have to meet from governing bodies, from even the legislation around the Dental Act, it takes a really intensive input to train our postgraduates. I also do some doctoral supervision. I got 3 students who are doctors at the moment, just about finishing, and I'm involved in national and international advocacy efforts, essentially to address inequality in health outcomes for people with disabilities. And I do a little bit of research as well. So that's my field. As I get older through the system, I'm more focusing away from individual projects onto developing methods, developing partnerships and programs of research, and increasingly bringing on the next generation of clinical leads and clinical academic leads as well. So that's a little bit about me. And I'm just a member of a very diverse community within the dental school. And what's interesting is the dental school is both the school in Trinity and it's the Dublin Dental University Hospital. So we have many masters. We have obligations clinically, educationally, to many different reference points. And we also have obligations towards Trinity and academia as well. The dental school is very diverse. We have research in microbiology, which is a huge part of what we do, sustainability, dental education. We also have perhaps what you might consider more traditional dental research. So we have biomaterials research and specialist research areas such as endodontics, orthodontics, periodontics. So a lot of traditional dentistry as well. And we have some fantastic talent working in these fields. We also have quite an input into life course and population health research. So my own research on older adults, right through to our pediatric departments studying pediatrics. So it's a very diverse group of researchers in a very small school. And we hit wide and we hit big for the small group that we are. And here's some of the stats that we have from our most recent, or from a couple of years ago. Most of our higher degrees are clinical, apart from PhDs. So this is the type of research that I'm involved in. There's 3 examples here. I'm field building in the field of behavior management. So I've set up and run the Beside network. And I'm doing this in collaboration with colleagues in the School of Psychology. And what really helped me set this up was COVID, actually having time to do some research. And since then, the ability to be able to work from home 1 day a week is life-changing. It has changed my ability to produce research at an nth level. So we're working away on that there. I won't go into the details on it. I'm also working on health measurement stuff. I'm working very closely with the School of Nursing and Midwifery on this, and IDS Tilda and the Trinity Centre for Aging and Intellectual Disabilities. And what I'm doing there is bringing skills from dental school and meeting the infrastructure that's available in the Trinity Centre and using that collaboration synergistically, and we have fantastic input. So we're developing new methods. We are identifying needs across the population of people with disabilities based on those methods. And then I'm being given a platform through the leadership within that Trinity Centre to talk to governments, to go into the Department of Health and make a difference. So that collaboration is really synergistic, and it shows what we can do across Trinity when we're working across the schools in a healthy research culture. Equally, I'm then implementing these findings in a clinical setting, and I'm reaching out to charity, through external partners, securing small pot money outside of here, less than $250,000, and working with charities then to make change in people's health. So, for example, the Keep My Teeth Project and the Brush My Teeth Project, it's about enhancing care for people with disabilities where they live. Having that cross-school engagement is really important. Having support from senior colleagues within the dental school and from other schools has been dramatic impact on my ability to make impactful research. And these small pot funds. So, for example, I've got a PhD student at the moment that I got through, I think it's the Dean's Awards, I think they're called nowadays, or maybe the old 1252s. And having that PhD student there has been absolutely instrumental in reaching policymakers. So these things are very healthy. Last slide, you'll be glad to hear. I'm going to talk about what this means for Trinity culture. I'm 17 years here employed in this role, but I've been here since 1997. And what I've seen in my 17 years here in this post is a complete turnaround in how research is perceived by people I work with. If I was publishing more than 1 or 2 papers a year back 15 years ago, I would probably be seen as somebody who wasn't pulling my fair weight, as somebody who was not doing enough teaching, who was not doing enough clinical care. And actually, it was kind of seen as that if somebody was excelling in research, that it was a bit unfair. Because people who were, and the reality was that people who were achieving that were basically sacrificing work-life balance. And it was these internally motivated individuals who were able to produce that. Now, there is an element that's still there, but there's definitely been a shift to how we see research as a core activity of clinical academia in the dental school. And that has been absolutely powerful for people like me. So we recognize now that we want clinicians to produce research and that this is an important feature. Another thing that's happened at the school level is that we now have an infrastructure. And that infrastructure, for example, I put two examples here. We have a school-based research ethics committee. And for anybody who's here longer than me or as long as me will remember when everything used to have to go to faculty and you would be looking at a 6-month return. The fact that we now have school level research ethics committees is game changing. It is absolutely game changing. We also have for the first time a hub level, a school level shared resource for research. We have a half-time research impact officer. It is the first research hire that is shared across the whole hub that I'm aware of. And again, it shows the way in which we can drive culture through strategic development. And this is potential for game-changing outputs from the dental school, across the school. So what makes research culture? What do we need next? Protect the time as always. And this is improving, but there's people who I work with here who are so talented. If they were given more time, they would excel. And when we compare these people to their peers, to like for like, in other dental schools in other parts of the world where they have more time protected, we will never compare to them. We will never be able to meet their standard, even though we have the talent to do that. And part of this is about strategic direction. I have to provide excellent clinical care, excellent education, excellent research. I'm a part-timer in everything I'm supposed to be good at. There has to be a way in which we can support people, our rising stars, and let them shoot. We have to find ways to let them do this rather than holding them back. And equally, our people who have potential to grow, we need to give that space for them as well. Engagement with Trinity College is vital for our development, but it's also vital for Trinity College's development as well. We have the opportunity in the dental school to offer translation of direct observable impact on patient and population health. And we work and we want to work with experts outside of our school across Trinity College to make these changes happen. And again, then recognition of applied impact is very important. I'm going to leave you with this. School of Dental Science, we're a translational bridge. We have potential to connect clinical insight, inclusive engagement, and interdisciplinary collaboration to generate meaningful impact. And I thank you all for giving me the opportunity to share my speech.
Thank you so much, Caoimhín. Also fantastic, and yeah, great to have an oversight there of your journey. And I think we'll pivot to the last speaker now, Dr. Mark Byrne, who is a research fellow in the School of Nursing and Midwifery. And then after that, we will head to the panel discussion with our directors of research.
Okay, thanks very much. Thank you, Maeve. And I've really enjoyed the previous speakers, their excellent presentations. Thank you so much. My name is Mark Byrne, and as Maeve said, I'm currently working as a research fellow in the School of Nursing and Midwifery. My background is mainly in psychology and related areas like cognitive science and neuroscience. And I suppose my research interests can be very simply described in one question: what happens when people feel conflicted about something important to them? The kind of internal conflict that's really been at the center of most of my work that I've done. A lot of my research is focused on situations where people are under pressure, trying to make sense of difficult situations or struggling with a gap between what they believe and what they feel able to do. More recently, I've started applying some of those areas within healthcare settings, particularly in nursing practice. So that's really the common thread running through most of the work that I've done. And I think it also connects quite naturally to how I think about research culture and early research, early career research more generally. In my PhD research, I was looking at these kinds of conflicts in the context of depression. In particular, I was interested in rumination, when people become stuck repeatedly thinking about difficult experiences or negative thoughts. I explored whether cognitive dissonance theory could help us understand some aspects of that process a little differently. Very simply, cognitive dissonance theory is concerned with what happens psychologically when our experiences, beliefs, behaviors, or values don't sit comfortably together, and how people try to reduce or manage that tension. What interested me about that perspective was the idea that conflict isn't just something that people think about intellectually, but something that they actively try to make sense of or reduce. Over time, I became interested in how similar kinds of tensions might emerge in frontline healthcare work, especially nursing. So now I'm working as a research fellow with Jan de Vries, who supervised my PhD, and I'm involved in research looking at decision-making under pressure, situations where nurses may be dealing with time constraints, staffing pressures, competing demands, and responsibility for patient care all at once. What really interests me is the gap that can emerge between the standard of care that somebody wants to provide and what they're realistically able to do in practice under those conditions. Nursing research already describes this extremely well through concepts like missed care, care erosion, and moral distress. So I'm not approaching this as somebody arriving with a new explanation, but more as somebody trying to bring a psychological lens that might complement and support the work that's already happening in the field. I'm not interested in just understanding these experiences theoretically, but also in exploring whether understanding might eventually support education, reflective practice, or interventions that may help people navigate those moments of pressure more effectively. And one of the things that I've really valued within the School of Nursing and Midwifery is the openness to that kind of interdisciplinary perspective. So I spend a lot of time thinking about conflict and in other people's work. And I think, like a lot of early career researchers, I've experienced some version of that tension within my own career as well. For me, research culture has really been experienced through the practical realities of academic life, the opportunities people have access to, the support and the mentorship that they receive, and the uncertainty that can exist around contracts and progression, and ultimately whether they feel able to continue developing within academia over time. I think that my own experience has involved both genuinely positive support and quite significant uncertainty existing at the same time. One of the things that I've really appreciated within the School of Nursing and Midwifery and within Trinity more broadly has been the openness and support that I've experienced from the people around me. I've been very fortunate to have strong mentorship, particularly from Jan, but not just in terms of guidance, but in being actively included in projects, conversations, and opportunities to develop. And one thing that I've especially valued is the support. That support hasn't felt overly hierarchical or gatekept. For example, through Trinity's ARC, the Early Research Development Programme, Jan encouraged me to choose a mentor outside of our direct working relationship, so I could benefit from a different perspective alongside his own support. I thought that was a really thoughtful example of what good research culture could look like, not just supporting somebody, but actively helping somebody expand their network and develop more independently. I've also really valued the openness to interdisciplinary work. My own background isn't in nursing, and I've appreciated the willingness within the school to engage with perspectives coming from psychology and behavioural science, and to explore how those approaches might complement existing nursing research and practice. And even relatively small things like being included in discussions, trusted with teaching opportunities, or invited into ongoing projects, this can make a huge difference to whether somebody feels valued and able to imagine a future within academia. At the same time, I think that one of the biggest challenges in my own experiences has been with precarity. After finishing my PhD and postdoctoral work, I reached a point where a lot of the opportunities available to me were very short-term, part-time, or uncertain. At that stage of my life, with a young family and responsibilities outside of work, it became increasingly difficult to see how that path could be sustained long term. So I made a decision to step away from academia for a period. And I think at that time I experienced that quite personally. I'd invested a huge amount of time and effort into academic training, and I think that I expected that if I worked hard enough and completed a PhD, that there would eventually be a clearer, more stable pathway forward. But coming back, I think my perspective has changed quite a lot. I don't really see the uncertainty now as a reflection of my own worth or ability in the same way as perhaps I did before. I see it as more of part of the structural reality of early academic life, particularly for early career researchers trying to build continuity through short-term opportunities and contracts. That doesn't mean that the uncertainty disappears. I still think about what happens at the end of a contract, whether there'll be gaps between opportunities or whether or how people maintain continuity in research over time. But I now approach it more strategically and with eyes more open. I've become much clearer about the direction that I want to move in professionally. And I think that I've also become more aware that building long-term academic path often means actively creating continuity for yourself rather than expecting it to emerge automatically. I also had the opportunity a few years ago to work on some broader university survey data around staff experiences and attitudes. And I think that helped reinforce for me that these concerns, they're not simply individual experiences or isolated frustrations. They're patterns that many people across academia are trying to navigate. So I suppose where I've arrived with all of this is that for me, research culture is really experienced through the day-to-day academic life. It's experienced through the opportunities that are given, that people are given, the mentorship, the encouragement that they receive, the uncertainty that they may be trying to navigate, and ultimately whether they feel able to continue to build a future within academia over time. I think that my own experience has involved both of these realities existing at the same time. Strong support, encouragement, and opportunities to develop alongside a level of uncertainty that can be quite difficult to navigate. I don't think those tensions are fully resolved, and I'm not sure that they're resolved for many early career researchers. But I do think that strong local cultures, good mentorship and thoughtful leadership, openness to collaboration and creating meaningful opportunities for people makes an enormous difference to whether people feel able to stay and continue to build a path within research. I think the perspective that I now have is I see academic development as something that I need to engage in more strategically and actively, while also recognizing how important good support, mentorship, and the opportunity are in making that possible. So for me, good research culture is really about creating the conditions where people can do meaningful work, continue developing, and realistically remain part of academic life over time. Thanks very much. I really appreciate that. Maeve, I'll give that back over to you.
Thank you so much, Mark, and thank you to all of our four speakers. I think touching on so many different themes there that are relevant and relatable to so many people on the call, anyone doing research, themes of belonging, precarity, balancing parenthood with doing science, positive mentorship, and fostering research talent. Those are all themes that anyone who's done research can relate to. And also thank you for the vulnerability and sharing all of that as well. I think it's really commendable. And so I hope that we'll be able to continue this discussion now in the panel with our directors of research, moderated, and director of TTMI, moderated by a director of Trinity Research, Dr. Sally Smith. So I'm going to hand it over now to Sally to start the panel discussion.
Thank you very much, Maeve. And I also want to say thanks to the four speakers for really extraordinarily rich research stories and personal stories and reflection culture. So thank you very much. So we're now moving on to our panel discussion, and I'm delighted to introduce the directors of research from each school and the faculty, along with the director of TTMI, who very kindly agreed to join us this afternoon, and we're really thrilled to have the opportunity to speak with them about research culture. So our panelists are Professor Eilish Burke, who is a professor in ageing and intellectual disability in the School of Nursing and Midwifery, Professor Sarah Doyle, professor of immunology in the School of Medicine, Professor Anne-Marie Healy, who's a professor of pharmaceutics and pharmaceutical technology in the School of Pharmacy and Pharmaceutical Sciences, Professor Hal Duncan, Professor of Dental Science in the School of Dental Science, consultant and a consultant at the Dublin Dental University Hospital, and Professor Mark Little, who is a Professor of Nephrology in the School of Medicine, a consultant nephrologist and Director of the Trinity Translational Medicine Institute. So thanks very much for agreeing to participate this afternoon. So the format is I will pose a few questions to each of our panelists, and hopefully we'll have time for some general questions at the end. And please, any of the participants, please put your questions in the Q&A, and we hope to have a few minutes at the end to address those from the audience, as it were. So let's get started, and I'll begin by asking Professor Healy, Anne-Marie. I'd like to start with a fairly general question about healthy research cultures. So what does healthy research culture mean to you? And what are the components that you would see as really central to developing and maintaining one, especially for early career researchers?
Yeah, thanks, Sally. You can hear me okay? Great. Yeah, I think, you know, a lot of what we've already heard is what I feel is, you know, key to a healthy research culture. I mean, I think the Dean started off with saying, you know, it's all about the supports that we can provide to researchers to enable them to do the research that they want to do, that they're interested in, and that they feel is going to have an impact. And I think we've heard that from our 4 speakers already. Is a key is to feeling that they're in a supportive environment. And a supportive environment, obviously, the mentorship is key, but I think also it's support in terms of acquiring funding, in terms of having access to equipment, or access to, you know, infrastructure to enable you to deliver on your research. It's critically supports to allow the researchers to do the research and take away the burdens associated with perhaps administration. Also to have, you know, professional input in terms of technical support, which is critical. So a supportive environment and nurturing a supportive environment, I think, is important. I also think, and some of the speakers spoke to it, about collaboration, you know, and having collaboration to enable people work not in isolation, but as part of a wider team, where, you know, they can learn from other people, but also get that synergy that often results in better research and research output. So I suppose in that respect, to have an openness in terms of the community that we have in Trinity, to have an openness to collaboration, an openness to sharing of resources, to sharing of, you know, infrastructure and know-how and so on. And then I suppose the third element that I feel is probably important, and particularly so for early career researchers, is training opportunities, supported by leadership and giving people the time and the space to develop. And so if that can be provided through central college supports or at school level or whatever, I think Caoimhín mentioned, you know, that I think the research impact officer that we now have shared with the School of Dental Science, that's the first kind of research support that we've had. So this person is shared between pharmacy and dental science. They're the first kind of research support that we've had at school level. And there's huge opportunity there for that to make a significant impact to researchers in both our schools. And I think it's very welcome to see more resource going into central college supports as well in terms of research support. So
thanks very much. And I think that is really, really interesting, and I'll certainly pick up on some of those themes as we go on. Professor Burke, I wanted to ask you about what I think is a very important enabler of healthy research cultures, and that is research leadership. So first, I'd like to ask you what you think excellent research leadership looks like. But also, do you think there are challenges for academics and researchers who want to dedicate time to research leadership activities that develop healthy research culture? So activities like developing talent, forging collaborations for research, for members of their research team, etc. Do you think there are challenges for leaders who want to invest time in those sorts of areas?
Yeah. First of all, thanks, Sally, and thanks for inviting me onto the panel. And congratulations to our 4 speakers. Their presentations were fabulous. And they really gave us food for thought. And I think there's a couple of things resonated with me. What Cherie said about surround yourself with excellent people. And I think I'm thinking about leadership, and I've been very fortunate to have had Professor Mary McCarran as my mentor. She's the director of the Trinity Centre for Aging and Intellectual Disabilities, but she was someone who has consistently supported and guided me and creating those opportunities that allowed me to grow and develop. So I can't kind of think about research culture and how it is without thinking of it's your past kind of informs your future. But leadership, excellent leadership, kind of excellent research leadership really is about creating possibilities and helping people see beyond what they think they can achieve. It's also about helping people find their own niche and maybe encouraging researchers to identify what genuinely interests them, and then to sort of help them develop their distinctive angle that they can own. So myself, I come from a clinical nursing background, and I've always seen and research through a very practical lens. So where innovation comes from within sort of the clinical setting being kind of constrained, or where you have to be very resourceful and responsive and really think about being person-centered in how we do things. So the key qualities then for me being or as a leader is someone who's not afraid to have blue skies thinking while still keeping your foot grounded in kind of reality. But also set high standards and don't settle for second best, and I think a leader, again, I'm thinking of who I look up to and the leaders that I've experienced, people who've had grit, really true grit and determination, but again, balanced in realism. But a leader to me is, someone who leads by example. Again, I think Cherie had it on her thing, leaders eat last. And I think that's, if a leader has to have a very visible work ethic, demonstrate their integrity and their follow through. So it's someone who, as Cherie had said, the leaders eat last. So you're really leading by example. But my own philosophy in relation to leadership is to lead from behind, to put the team up front and create opportunities for them to shine. And I think if they shine, you shine too. And be very willing to be practical, roll up your sleeves, support the logistics, get in there, step in at the gaps. And leaders really need to be kind of actively nurturing talent. Someone else said that about, there's loads of talent. We need to rise, let them up and let them shine. I think it was Kev, but really being inclusive and intentional about supporting your team so that they can avail of all the opportunities. And there are so many opportunities in Trinity that maybe we don't highlight it enough. And sometimes we kind of look across the fence and think, is the grass greener elsewhere? So I think we have such fantastic resources in Trinity. But when we think about the challenges then and your leadership activities, kind of things like mentoring, building collaborations, supporting others, I think those kind of activities are often undervalued in the formal workload models. So you'll always have that tension between, the time, your time tension. And I think Kev captured it with his multi-role that he has to meet. I think, unfortunately, the system still prioritizes individual outputs over collective success. So the reward structure needs to be challenged. I think supporting people, managing teams, sustaining collaborations, and that takes a huge amount of energy. And it isn't always recognized. So again, they're the challenges that are they cause tensions in the role, because that's a lot of emotional labor. And a lot of the times emotional labor is not acknowledged. So as a leader kind of maintaining your own research trajectory, you have to invest in yourself as well. So again, there's pull on your time. So the overall balancing of roles is quite challenging.
Well, I think that's oh, sorry, I'm
sorry. No, go ahead. No, that's. I was just thinking in relation to the mentorship and broadly how you as a leader, you're talking about different levels of mentorship, especially people very senior roles, and they're like it's like your pyramid. They're looking down, but yet they're trying to manage all, and that can cause tensions, and they have to at the same time maintain their team and all the other constricting aspects. Again, I think Cherie talked about, or was it, I'm not too sure, in relation to where will the next funding come from so that I can maintain my postdoctoral researchers, my postdoctoral fellows. That's quite stressful.
Yeah, and I think really, really excellent points there that we'll pick up on about incentivisation, about care for leaders, what it takes to be a leader and how much, how it can be depleting and what we owe, our colleagues and each other in terms of that duty of care. Thank you so much. Professor Duncan, I wanted to pick up with you a point that we've heard a lot this afternoon, which is about mentorship and research mentoring. Because I think, there does seem to be a really strong agreement that this can be powerful, it can be career changing. I wanted to ask you what you think of research mentoring and research mentorship. Have you experienced it yourself? What do you think are the most effective features when it comes to really high quality research mentoring?
Thank you, Sally. Yeah, an interesting question about mentorship, because I think mentorship has come a long way. I remember when I was a PhD student, we used to always talk about tormentorship, and that your PhD supervisor was there to torment you and push you and shove you in all the directions, and there was really nothing much else going on. So I think we have developed this idea quite a lot over the last sort of 10, 15 years. It's been touched on by a lot of people today, if you like, about how important it is. There's also a sort of, I think, a misconception that to some extent it's not experience dependent. It's that this idea was it was there to develop future leadership. Of course it's there to develop future leadership. But Ailish was just talking as well, is that when you become a leader yourself, you actually need mentorship as well. Because very often you're not entirely sure how to do that role, or are you doing it correctly? Even at that stage of your career, you may well have career aspirations. So there has to be a little bit of 360 degrees mentorship. It should focus, of course, on the people that are needing it the most, who are really vulnerable and early in their career. But it should actually be there and present for all parts of the research journey, from inexperienced to very experienced. I also think, quite importantly, it's not discipline dependent. People may refer to their mentors as being, in my case, a pulp biologist, another pulp biologist, but that's really quite a small field. Some of the best insights you have into research and academia come from people completely disparate or remote from what you're actually doing. Their journey might have been completely different, but they have a very different review on research, how your time should be managed, how you should be best used for impact, all these things. And I think having outside, and it can be outside your institution, it can be outside your discipline, I think having some degree of outside mentorship is equally bit as important as, for example, having a dental mentor in my case, or even having a Trinity mentor. Someone outside that whole bubble, or even outside Ireland, is very useful in that sense if you're lucky enough to make those connections. If I look back at the sort of mentorship I had, some of it was mentorship without me actually knowing it, if I'm honest. Some of it was really passive. I think somebody mentioned, going around for a cup of tea, or going for a pint, or going to watch something with someone. And very often a lot of information was conveyed in that session, which almost you didn't even notice it was happening. So it was a very passive way of doing it. Well, mentorship now tends to be much more formalized and active, but we can also get very good mentorship in a passive sense, just by being in the company of someone who's very experienced, who can just pass on pearls of knowledge. And some of the best mentorship I had was in that regard. I remember baking bread with an old pulp biology guy, Tony Smith, who's now retired, and I learned an awful lot just baking, not about baking bread. I still couldn't bake bread, but I learned a lot about how to do research and how he'd managed to negotiate both the stressful and the sort of other aspects of his career to be a leader, but with balance. I think that was really important for me. And if I look at the best ideas of a mentor, I mean, I suppose now I'm a mentor also, and I guess we're all still learning. I think there's a tendency to judge people. I think if you're a mentor, you have to have a lack of judgment. You have to basically understand that their circumstances are very different from yours. You have to be a little bit bespoke in your management skills. We kind of see this a little bit more in modern society. This sort of hairdryer, old Scottish football manager sort of way of dealing with people doesn't really work so much anymore. I think it may work for one or two, but for most people, that's not an effective management skill. For some people, it might, but you really have to work out, how is this person going to benefit best from my help or my assistance or my knowledge? And you have to be flexible, because we all have good weeks and bad weeks, or good days and bad days. And perhaps the most important aspect of mentorship is how we deal with people when they've had really particularly bad days or bad weeks or bad months or a couple of grant submission rejections. And it's really how you pick people up at that point. So you have to be flexible in your approach as well. There's not a handbook, I think, but I think it's extremely important. Now, it's in some way for college, for each school within college, for the faculty and beyond, to have some sort of formalized program around it, because I think it's increasingly important.
Thanks very much, Hal. And I think, yeah, I love the idea of baking bread with someone that can tell me about my career. So thank you very much. And Professor Doyle, if I can turn to you, Sarah, I wanted to ask about research assessment, because ideas of incentives, idea of what is rewarded, what is seen, what is valued has come up a couple of times. And obviously many of the ways that research and researchers are assessed, so for example, recruitment, promotion, and so on, really does tend to reward the production of lots of a fairly narrow range of research outputs. And it can mean that those wanting to spend time on other types of activities, PPI, engaged research, open research, etc., can sometimes be disadvantaged when researchers are assessed that way. I'd be interested to hear your thoughts on that. What changes, if any, would you like to see in research assessment practices?
Thanks, Ali. So that's a really interesting question, because I think I'm kind of listening to how you're framing that. It seems to me that there's kind of an idea that actually things like PPI, open research, and engaged research mightn't be valued in the same way as potentially kind of the kind of high impact papers, maybe, that kind of we tend to think of as helping people through promotions. My own experience is that we do value PPI and engaged research, certainly in the School of Medicine. So I actually would be interested to know if it's at some point, maybe not now, if that is actually feedback that you got from the faculty, that people feel that that type of research is undervalued. Because I think that's definitely something that we need to improve on, if that's the case, and make sure that people feel that that kind of research is supported. I would consider, especially kind of, in my understanding of what PPI is, and kind of just for anyone who doesn't know me, I'm a fundamental kind of biochemist, immunologist, and so PPI to me really only came into my research in probably the last kind of maybe 7-ish years, and up until then I didn't know what it stood for at all, but so I think kind of what I have learned over these years is that actually PPI can be embedded really from kind of developmental stages of a research program right through to kind of publication and dissemination. And we have PPI panels now. Kind of a lot of different people in different labs have PPI panels, and it's that PPI, that kind of methodology or that process, is really embedded throughout the research programs. And so I kind of don't see them as being parallel kind of research methodologies or research practices, but more that people can kind of bring those kind of, kind of whether it's PPI engagement along with other types of research. They don't have to be separate things, and therefore they don't necessarily need to kind of, be at odds with each other or compete with each other. That's my own kind of impression of it. And I could be wrong, and I'd be really interested to know if I am, because I certainly believe that all research activities should be supported and should be recognized in terms of research assessment, which is kind of what your question was about. And I think that those kind of activities can be assessed. I think it's fairly probably straightforward in one sense to assess PPI and engagement through like kind of looking at the events that are held, kind of, formal feedback from whether it's the PPI panel members, patients, the cohorts that you might be working with, kind of whether it's looking at policies that might cite the work that you are producing. So I recognize that, kind of not all research output has to be kind of the journal article, but I still think that they are outputs, kind of, and that we can metric them, we can assess them, maybe in a slightly different way, but not too differently, I would say. I think you were asking about kind of, other things that might be assessed. And actually, I think one of the things that's obviously come across really strongly here is collaboration and mentorship. And I think that that's something that probably isn't assessed that really could be. And again, kind of there's two kind of things there. One is kind of, being a great team player. And the other is actually kind of, mentoring others into roles. And that's relatively accessible, I would say. We can go back and we can ask, kind of ex-team members, where they were, awards that have been won maybe from kind of, people within your team and things like that. So I do think that there are other ways of assessing research excellence, and we should be definitely supporting them in terms of things like promotion and recognition.
Sally,
I can't. Oh yeah, there's something that was funny. Can you guys hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah, I don't know why. I sometimes have to lift my laptop up randomly. I'm going to place it down gently, and I hope it works. Thanks very much, Sarah. It's really, really interesting, and as I said, quite heartening to hear that perspective. And it's certainly something that Tig and Maeve and the team will be looking at. As you say, many of these things are absolutely accessible. There are complexities and so forth around them, but it's enabling that, I suppose. Thank you very much. And finally, Professor Littlemark, I'm actually going to pick up here a point that again has been made quite significantly throughout the session, and also I believe we have a question in the chat around it, which is about sort of collaboration within the faculty, and not solely interdisciplinary collaboration, but perhaps including interdisciplinary collaboration. I'd be interested in your thoughts on what you think works really well right now, perhaps in the faculty or in Trinity more broadly, and what would you like to see enhanced in the future in terms of enabling collaboration between interested colleagues, as I said, both within disciplines and between them.
Thanks, Sally. Can you hear me okay? I'm at the Helix in DCU.
Are you? Yes, we can. Yeah.
I'm a little Mark, by the way. So firstly, I mean, I kind of believe strongly, and I think our four speakers really brought this out, that interdisciplinary and collaboration working makes for a better and a more impactful science. And although I'm a cellular immunologist and clinician scientist, I'm currently at the ADAPT Centre annual conference, where my PhD student, amazing PhD student, Angel George, is presenting on a novel machine learning approach for representing real-world immunosuppressant medication data. Over 50% of my research is now with computer scientists, and I lead the ADAPT Health Working Group. Now, I'm a really crappy coder, but I can articulate the clinical question, I think, and help design the analysis, provide access to large data sets. So I think, Sally, the question is not about inter-school collaboration within the faculty, but about wider connections, irrespective of faculty borders. In TTMI, we depend utterly on a core, mutually beneficial interdisciplinary relationship that is between the bench immunologist, cancer scientist, nanoscientist, and the clinician. And I think this applies to other schools as well. Like working with data scientists in ADAPT, this collaboration is not easy. It requires a shift in mindset from both parties, a willingness to learn a different language. And I think that nurturing this interdisciplinary relationship and similar ones across the faculty relies, firstly, I think, on creating fora, which can be digital, where the various parties can meet and explore complementary research skills and interests. And I think focused seed funding mechanisms, such as the Building Engagements and Health Research Awards that your office has supported and that we run every year, I think these are critical. And finally, from my perspective, we need mechanisms, as has been mentioned by some of the other panel members, for recognizing and rewarding such interdisciplinary approaches and collaborative approaches. And I think in reality, the metrics which bestow esteem are generally unidimensional in Trinity and filtered along the vector of the school to which you happen to be attached, how many grants were housed in your school, how many publications had the school affiliated, that interdisciplinary Marie Curie ITN that you landed as coordinator, that'll be recognized in TCD by the amount drawn down in the Green Book, which likely represents about 10% of the grant award. So I think the standard measures of esteem employed in TCD don't really handle researchers with multiple affiliations very well. So I'm really delighted to see that part of Maeve's remit is to bring nuance to such measures of new research quality. So I'm really delighted to see that. So thanks very much.
Thanks very much, Mark. Yeah, and I think that point about how things are measured and counted, right, is a general problem that we have actually throughout the section, not just in Trinity at all. I'd like to pose one sort of final question for the whole panel, and this is really about power relationships, I suppose, within the academy. And I think it is the case that in general, and sectorally, it is true that some research cultures really tend towards reinforcement of academic hierarchy, which can itself reinforce some of the more problematic relationships that hierarchies bring. And I'd be interested in your thoughts collectively, really, is how can we, as Trinity colleagues, move towards safer and more equitable settings in our research lives? Anyone just jump in if you have any thoughts.
I mean, maybe we're the wrong people to ask, because maybe
why?
Maybe we're we're all professors. I mean, I think maybe this is something that impacts, or does it? I hope it doesn't, early career researchers more. So, I mean, I think Trinity has moved some way to ensure greater equity and this move away from a hierarchical approach. I think, was it Hal said, you're back in the day, your PhD supervisor was maybe a tormentor rather than a mentor. I'm not sure that that's entirely fair for all PhD supervisors, but I think even the move now towards having it like a thesis committee, as opposed to you're just dependent on that one supervisor with whom you have a good or not so good relationship, depending, but you're kind of stuck with them if you want to get your PhD. So I think those kind of moves to broaden out the level of engagement that the researchers can have with supervisors, with mentors, with others, either within or outside of their own school, I think ensures that hierarchical effect maybe is less now than what it might have been in the past.
Yeah. Definitely.
I agree.
Yeah.
Alice, you want to go?
Yeah, I definitely agree with what Anne-Marie was saying, and maybe back in the day there was different things. But I think if you look at structures and think about sort of that whole thing about moving towards safer, more equitable relationships, you start small. How we run meetings, how decisions are made, whose voices are heard. Being very explicit in our expectations, particularly with our early career researchers around their role, and supporting them and giving them the opportunities to be decision makers, and then creating the space for our early career researchers to really contribute meaningfully, not just operationally. So it starts small in meetings, that giving people the opportunity that they do feel comfortable. And I think I suppose I'm very fortunate. I am in the Trinity Centre for Ageing and the Life Course in Intellectual Disability. And I think it's and I'm being biased as well, it's just an amazing centre that demonstrates really good research culture. But we have the space, we're all together, we've got fabulous leadership, and we've got really a focused direction, and everyone knows their role and everyone gets the opportunity to shine. And I think that's what we really need to nurture, to make sure that these, that archaic hierarchical things doesn't creep in.
That's wonderful. Hal, did you have something to say? Do you want the
well,
last word?
yeah, just a couple of things. First of all, it's a hierarchical system, and I think that is the academic system. There is a system of promotion, which by definition makes it hierarchical. So you're trying to fight against that a little bit. I think meetings like this are important. I think collegiality is the key here. Very often you come into universities and the hierarchy, or the more senior people really didn't want anything to do with the younger people in the building. That was the way it was. It's a them and us type scenario. I think the more collegial we are, and Kev talked about it in dental school, the more people are approachable, are involved in research and the culture of research, I think the better this will become. Because I think that's really key, to be honest.
Thank you very much. And I'd like to thank everyone here on the panel, including Professor Doyle, whose connection has dropped. Thank you very much for really enriching, really, I think, really wonderful discussion. I think it is a great start to our research culture at work. And I will pass back to Maeve. Thanks very much.
No, just to echo what Sally said, and thank you so much for your contributions and for everybody who has stayed on the call. And as I said, my email is always open, so I hope to meet more of you over the coming months. And please do drop me an email with any thoughts, anything that's prompted, any reflection from this discussion. If you want to message me to meet up and talk about it, I'm always open. And thank you so much again for our panelists, and I'll close the meeting.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Brian will
Thanks,
close the
Maeve.
meeting.
Thanks,
Sorry.
Sally.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thanks very much.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.